Folks. I hope you're all doing well today, or I hope you're having a good start to your day, or maybe if you are well on your way on your to your day, I hope you're enjoying your day so far. Anyway, my name is Toki. I work for Ripley's Aquarium of Canada. I work in the education department, and today I am here to talk to all of you about our lobsters and Pinchy, of course. Um, Before we get into the details of today's YouTube live, I just wanted to mention that I do have a few people helping me out today. That we have a few different camera angles that we will be sharing with all of you today. And if you have any questions, feel free to type in your questions in the chat. I can save those questions, put those questions to the side, and then I can answer them later on at the end. That'll require a lot of multitasking from me, but still, I can do that definitely. And also, I have some good news and some bad news. To start things off with the bad news, and this is very common with working with live animals. We actually moved Pinchy out of the lobster tank for now, and I will tell you all why later on. But good news is I do have some Pinchy photos that I took last week. And if we are lucky, we might be able to see Pinchy later on with a different angle. Before I tell you why that is, let me just first get things rolling with a land acknowledgement. Okay, so Ripley's Aquarium of Canada acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaties signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Today, the meeting place of Toronto, also known as Toronto, meaning the place in the water where the trees are standing, is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to work on this land. All right. So I'm seeing a lot of action in our chat, in the chat right now. That is awesome. Thank you for participating. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to type in your questions. I can go through these list of questions and I can put them aside, and I will answer all of them at the end. For now, let me just share with you our lobster habitat, and I will start to explain what with the current situation, the predicament that we have. So just to give a brief update on Pinchy, and also context for a lot of the people here who haven't probably heard of Pinchy. Pinchy is one of our most recent orange lobster. Orange lobsters, they come in different colors, and the lobsters that we are used to seeing, the red color of a lobster when they are cooked, that is actually not their natural color. Uh, I can show you in a bit what their natural color is. For now, let's just look at the tank. Ooh, I think I can see a white lobster over there in the lower. Thank you, Katie. I believe that is one of our white lobster, or that is our white lobster. And the other lobster beside it earlier, the bigger one, I believe that is a blue lobster from the shade. I could be wrong, either blue or brown. Anyway, now what happens with Pinchy and how are lobsters able to, why are there different colored lobsters? Actually, to get to that part, I will share a photo from the PowerPoint slide that I showed you earlier. Give me a sec. Okay, so Pinchy update real quick. This is a photo of Pinchy, a very photogenic photo, a really good photo of Pinchy from when Pinchy first arrived at the aquarium. This is of course heavily filtered, so that's why Pinchy looks very photogenic. And these are some of Pinchy's pals. Now, the photo to the right of Pinchy, the brown colored lobster, that lobster's name is Gerald. And that is the natural color of lobsters, or of most lobsters in the ocean. They have a nice brown color to them. That is because they live in murky parts of the ocean, in the deeper parts of the ocean, and having a darker color would help them camouflage. It'll help them hide. The lobster on the bottom of Pinchy or below Pinchy is our three-clawed lobster. You heard me right. Three-clawed lobster. This is the third claw right there, highlighted in the yellow circle. That is a genetic mutation, by the way. So not every lobster would have three claws. And this lobster's name is Triton. I saw it earlier in the habitat, so if we're lucky, we might see it in a bit. But who knows? We are dealing with live animals. And the lobster to the bottom, on the bottom right of the screen, I believe that is Spider-Man. I got that photo from of Spider-Man last week. Now, why did we take Pinchy out of the lobster habitat? Well, since Pinchy just recently arrived to the aquarium, and also when Pinchy arrived, it was very small compared to our lobsters, the ones that we're taking care of. In lobster society, basically, they have a hierarchy. And the biggest and the strongest are always at the top of this hierarchy. And unfortunately for Pinchy, since Pinchy hasn't been here for Pinchy is just a recent addition. Pinchy hasn't really had a chance to blend into this hierarchy or to work its way up to in this hierarchy. So unfortunately, a lot of the lobsters are scaring Pinchy. So we decided to pull Pinchy out and take care of Pinchy in a separate area, just until Pinchy gets big enough, of course. And you might be wondering, what would this look like in an aquarium setting, in this type of habitat? What would lobsters trying to exert their dominance look like in an aquarium? Well, I prepared a quick video for that. Also, before the video, by the way, this is the most recent photo of Pinchy that I have. I got it last week. And yeah, that's what Pinchy looks like right now. Anyway, this is a video that I prepared for all of you to show you what lobster interaction would look like. One thing that I would like to point out here, and I'll explain more later, is that our lobsters, we actually glue their claws shut. I'll explain the reason why after. But here I'd like to highlight the fact that Triton, the bigger, more aggressive lobster, you can see the third claw there, is trying to push out another lobster because Triton is interested in that tiny cave. Triton probably thinks that that is a cozy cave. And I can share with you right now, I think that is Triton's favorite cave. I see Triton there a lot. Okay, let me just go back to the view of our lobster habitat. So why, after watching that video, and I mentioned that we glue their claws, you might be wondering, why do we glue their claws together? Well, one reason is because for lobsters, they actually don't use their claws for eating, or at least the big claws, they don't use it for eating. Gluing it shut won't affect their quality of life, and the only purpose of their bigger claws is for cutting things or crushing things. They actually have separate. There are separate functions for these claws. One is for crushing, one is for cutting, and they only use it to be aggressive towards other lobsters or maybe to try and get their food. So we decided to glue their claws shut, because if we did not glue their claws shut, they might just end up fighting each other to death. That is because, again, lobsters are very aggressive, and this is a part of their natural habit. They are very territorial. And you might be wondering, I mentioned this a little bit, but would it affect how they eat? It will not, since we are taking care of them in this type of habitat. We are able to give them food, and we can prepare the food for them. Say, for example, with mussels. Lobsters, they love to eat shellfish, like mussels. We actually end up opening the mussels for them. Oh, thank you, Katie. I can see Katie there. Sorry, excuse me for that. I just added an extra angle to the screen. But thank you, Katie. Katie's pointing out a shell from a mussel right there. Hopefully you can see it. But basically, we open up mussels for them, or any shellfish. We prepare the food for them to make it easier for them to eat. So it's not necessary for them to use their big claws to crush their food. And they would use their other limbs, other appendages, to get the food off of the shell. Now, I actually wanted to talk real quick about that, about lobsters and their different lobsters and their different limbs. Before that, I wanted to share with you this view, a different view. Um, right here is, I believe, I think that's Pinchy right there. Hopefully you can see. Thank you, Danielle. This is my this is my other colleague Danielle. She is helping me out. Danielle is pointing out Pinchy's antenna right there, and you can see the orange antenna that that Pinchy has. Um, Oh, this is also another lobster from the. I'm not sure who this one is. In case you were wondering, we take care of about 11 lobsters in the aquarium. I do not know all of their names. I do know a few ones, but yeah. Anyway, oh, I believe this is our biggest lobster in the aquarium right now. Oh, I think the Danielle is losing connection there. I'll just switch back to Katie's view. There you go. But the last lobster that Daniel was showing you, I believe that is Barbara, the biggest lobster in the aquarium. Anyway, I wanted to share with you what a lobster's limbs would look like from underneath, and I will just go back to my PowerPoint presentation for that. Okay, so this is what a lobster would look like from underneath. This is Pinchy when we first received Pinchy. And you can see that lobsters, they have many limbs. One definition for a lobster, or for a lobster to be considered, for an animal to be considered a lobster, they would need to have 5 pairs of legs. They also need to have an exoskeleton because that is a defining characteristic for lobsters. But focusing on their limbs or appendages, so those limbs or appendages with the red arrows, those are what the lobsters would be using for walking. And also the first 2 pairs can sometimes be used for grabbing food. Um, and that claw with the black arrow, that is what they use for being aggressive or for attacking. Again, gluing this claw shut won't affect their daily life. It just prevents them from ending up with hurting each other. And yeah, we just want to prevent that because we want to take care of them. Now, they also have a set of appendages that they would use for eating, specifically for that would push the food into their mouth. And yep, those are appendages. You can see a pair, and that is their mouth. And then they also have appendages that they use for swimming. Lobsters, they have a lot of appendages, basically. Now, let me just go back to Katie's view right there. Let's see who that lobster is. From this view, well, it's actually hard to tell. I want to say it's Triton, but it's hard to see. Anyway, other things that I wanted to mention is that aside I shared some defining characteristics for lobsters, and that would be having an exoskeleton or an outside skeleton, which would be the hard part on a lobster, and having many limbs, and having also one of their defining characteristics is that their limbs needs to have joints, or it needs to be jointed. It's a defining characteristic for arthropods. I want to focus on the fact that they have exoskeleton, just like other animals in the arthropod class or arthropod group. For lobsters to be able to grow, they actually shed their exoskeleton or their recent skeleton. They would need to molt out of it so that they can grow bigger. A cool fact about this is that actually in the ocean, one of the biggest causes or one of the biggest reasons why lobsters would die is because of the molting process. It's a very strenuous process. It takes a lot of energy, and they can sometimes, if they can't leave their molt or their exoskeleton, they just end up dying. And also after molting, they are very vulnerable. I actually prepared another photo here for all of you, and I'll just switch back to my PowerPoint view right here. I have here an example of a molt from Barbara, the biggest lobster in the aquarium. I added a sticky note there for size, for reference. Sticky note, a standard one is about 3.3 inches on all sides. And as you can see, Barbara there, Barbara's size would be equivalent to about 7 or 8 sticky notes. So that's somewhere around 21 to 24 inches in length, even more. about 2 feet, basically. So yeah, Barbara's the biggest lobster in the aquarium right now, about 2 feet, and she weighs at around 4 kilograms, I believe, or 4,000 grams. Now, I wanted to talk about molting and growing because I think it's really interesting for lobsters. For them to be able to grow, they would need to shed their old skeleton, or they would need to molt. And I want to share this cool fact that I've been thinking a lot about. Lobsters, in theory, they could end up living forever if they don't end up dying from molting, or if they don't get diseases, or if they don't get eaten. I think that's a really cool fact. And this is a really well preserved example of a molt, because we dip them into a chemical to preserve the molt, because we use it for teaching, just like what I'm doing right now. I can't grab Barbara's claws and show it to all of you because it's very fragile and I don't want to break it right now. But I can tell you that one of Barbara's claws is almost as long as my face is, I guess, if that makes sense. Now, I'll just go back to our lobster habitat view, just so we have something cool to look at. Here we go. Okay. Um, but yeah, I've mentioned a few cool facts, and I don't want to take too much of your time, so I'll just move on to the conservation message, because this is one thing that we like to do in the aquarium, to talk about animals and conservation for these animals. I mean, also, again, feel free to type in your questions. I am saving a lot of the questions. I need to catch up, of course, and I will not be able to answer all of these questions because there's a lot, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, moving on to the conservation part. If you were wondering how the lobster population is doing in the ocean, at least in regards to lobsters off of Nova Scotia, American lobster, basically. These would be lobsters that lives off of Nova Scotia up to the northeastern coast of the United States of America, so around Maine even. Um, the population for the American lobster, it's actually doing well. It's not decreasing their population, and it's also not increasing. But the good part of this is that it's not decreasing, so it's stable. And this is attributed by scientists to the fact that government off of these coasts, they're actually regulating lobster fishing really well. They have a lot of rules that lobster fisher people need to follow, and they are apparently following it. Um, and that is how we are able to keep the population of the American lobster stable. But in regards to lobster population in general, all over the world, scientists have found that lobsters are not doing so well. Unfortunately, every lobster all over the world, if you count their population, it's not doing so well. It's decreasing. And scientists have attributed this fact to climate change and the impacts of climate change to the ocean. How climate change can make the ocean uninhabitable for these animals, how it can slowly make the ocean uninhabitable for these animals. And also, it can make it very difficult for what lobsters like to eat, such as other crustaceans and shellfish, of course. It makes it difficult for lobster food to live in the ocean. And also, that decrease in global population of lobsters can also be attributed to the fact that there is a lot of illegal, unregulated, and underreported fishing happening all over the world. That is something that every government would need to work on. So that issue would take a while. But in regards to climate change, that's something that we can actively take small steps to help out. One thing that I like to suggest with our friends is to our friends is that if you want to help out with climate change, you can try and do small things. You can try and change small things in your daily life, such as with how much plastic you use. Just try and be aware of the things that you do that would involve buying plastic or using plastic, and try and change that slowly. Do not change your habits too quickly, or don't try and take on anything that's too big. Don't try and take on a change that's too big, because that can make you feel alienated and make you feel like you're not doing anything. So try and do small changes, small steps, such as use reusable water bottles, use reusable coffee mugs, even use reusable tote bags when you go grocery shopping. These small things can have a lasting impact. And yeah, and in the future, this is something that we can that is very sustainable for us to do. And also, if you want another way to help out lobsters all over the world is if you want to buy seafood, maybe you can consider sustainable fishing practices or fish that was caught sustainably. There's a website called, there's an organization called Oceanwise that can help us out with in regards to sustainable fishing. Check them out, and they'll help. They are great help. Now, just to move on to the questions, because I am still catching up with how many questions we have. Let me just save a few more questions, and then I'll move on to answering them. Okay, I have 25 questions saved right now, and let me see. So the first question is this one right here. Are male lobsters bigger than female lobsters? That is a good question. And actually, it's the opposite. Female lobsters are bigger than male lobsters because female lobsters require more energy to produce so many eggs. There was another question here that I will not probably able to get to or to answer, but how many eggs can lobsters have? They can have somewhere between up to hundreds, up to even thousands of eggs. They are types of animals that would make a lot of eggs in hopes that a small few would survive from those thousands of eggs. Animals and reproduction, they have different methods of reproduction. That is one method of reproduction for animals, making many eggs and then hoping that a few of them would survive. Now, another question is, how sharp are their claws? That is a great question. Um, I can share with you that it's sharp enough to crack open or to cut open another crustacean's shell. Maybe not sharp enough to cut open a shellfish, such as a mussel or a clam. That in that case, that's when they would use their crushing claw. But their cutting claw, it should be sharp enough to cut another crustacean, another lobster maybe, or another crab. And yes, they do eat other lobsters, especially smaller ones than themselves, and other crustaceans like shrimps and crabs. Um, Here is an interesting question: did you rescue the lobster? And we actually, for us to get our lobsters, we actually have some sort of a deal with Dalhousie University off of Nova Scotia, where if they encounter interesting lobsters, such as different colored lobsters, and that is mainly why most of our lobsters have different colors, unusual colors, and also the third claw, just like Triton. They're very unusual lobsters. Dalhousie University would send those lobsters to us for us to take care of those lobsters. And also, I can share with you one story that's been passed along to people who work at the aquarium. Apparently, in one morning when before we opened, one of our employees found a box in front of our doors, and this box contained a blue lobster with a note saying that the restaurant who wanted to donate this lobster anonymously to the aquarium because it's a blue lobster, and they felt bad about selling the blue lobster. So yeah, these are things that can happen. Um, this is an interesting question right here. How big is the lobsters? Like I mentioned earlier, our biggest lobster in the aquarium that we take care of is Barbara, about 2 feet in length, 4 kilograms or 4,000 grams in weight. The smallest lobster that we're taking care of right now is El Chapo. El Chapo is about 2 years old. Is El Chapo is about 3 inches in length. And I know because I checked recently, and also I used the same method, the the sticky note method. El Chapo was just about the size of the sticky note. So yeah, about 3 or 3.3 inches in length. That's about a quarter of a foot, basically. And I've been told that El Chapo weighs in at around 50 grams on average. If you were curious about the biggest lobster in the world, like I mentioned earlier, in theory, lobsters are interesting animals. In theory, if the world was perfect, they can live forever, but that's not the case because a lot of things happen in the ocean. However, the biggest lobster ever found was caught off of the coast of Nova Scotia, and it weighed in at around 20 kilograms, 20,000 grams, or basically about 5 times the weight of Barbara. There is no record of the length of that lobster, but I guess we can just multiply Barbara's height or length by 5, and you would get a good idea. Also, that's you would need to take that in a grain of salt because these are just estimations. And anyway, another question is, let's see. Ooh, here's an interesting question. Do lobsters have babies? And yep, lobsters do have babies. I can share with you that lobster that El Chapo, we actually reared El Chapo, or we actually took care of El Chapo from an egg. El Chapo arrived as a hitchhiker, and all of its other broodmates within the batch of eggs that El Chapo belonged in, they were hitchhikers. One of our aquarists decided to take care of the eggs, and El Chapo survived. El Chapo ended up eating all of its other broodmates, but that's normal. That is common in the ocean and in animals. And yes, baby lobsters do have babies, and that is the story of how we got El Chapo and how we are taking care of El Chapo right now. Here is an interesting question from chat, and this would be, I would say, unfortunately, since we are running out of time, this would be the last question of the day. This question is, how can you tell a lobster's age? Very interesting question. Now, to tell a lobster's age, apparently scientists can look at a cross-section of the lobster's eye stalk. So lobsters and their eyes, they are protruding outwards, or it protrudes, and their eyes are attached onto a stalk. And scientists would need to cut that stalk in half to see its cross section, and they can count the rings in the eye stalk. Very similar to how people would be able to tell the age of a tree by counting tree rings. But yeah, that's how you can tell a lobster's age. Unfortunately, folks, even though there are still a lot of questions, we are running out of time. I apologize. If you have any more questions, feel free to send them to our Instagram account or to our YouTube account, or you can even email them to us and we will get back to you with answers. But for now, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I've already gone over time, unfortunately, and I would need to end it here. But yes, folks, I will end it here. A few things that I would like to mention is that if you would like to see more of our live content, we do try our best to share live content as often as we can. If in case we usually share our live content every Thursday, such as today. In case, and we will be giving out reminders. If you want to keep an eye on that, just follow our YouTube account and you can see the reminders for these live contents. And if you want to see more of our previous contents, it is recorded on YouTube. Feel free to check them out. We've got a lot of feeding videos there. If you were wondering, next week I believe we have another live in store for everyone next week. It's free for everyone. You just need to tune in. I don't want to share too much, so I will not tell you what the live is about. But yeah, you would need to wait for the reminder. You would need to tune in. Anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day. Again, this is Toki from Really Please Aquarium. Danielle and Katie helped out as well. From all of us, thank you, and we will see you again next time. Bye, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day.